All right, we are getting recorded, so
Okay.
be warned. Okay. So welcome, everyone. My name is Donny Lowry.
And I'm Kirk Prine.
And we are delighted to welcome you to yet another episode of Queer Tribe Conversations, where we have the pleasure to interview another gay luminary. So welcome to our episode today, and we want to especially welcome our very special guest, David Montecalvo. Welcome, David.
Thank you so much.
Do you use your full name, and is that a hyphenated name? It's the Vincent.
Oh no, it's I go by David. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Oh yeah. Okay.
I like my middle name though. When you say David Vincent Montecalvo, it makes me sound like I'm in trouble. That's what my mom said.
Oh.
Well,
I don't know in a good way or bad way.
All good stories healed that way.
Yes.
So Donny's going to read a little bio for all of you who don't know David.
Yeah, so let's find out a little bit more about David. So I have a little bio to give you a sense. So David began to celebrate his gayness in his mid-30s after experiencing an unplanned period of transition. During this beautiful yet challenging very difficult time, he discovered the teachings of New Thought, which empowered him to view his journey as divine and perfect. He leads the Gay Men's Spirituality Group based out of Unity, San Francisco, where he's the Chief Operating Officer. As a speaker on gay men's issues with a master's degree in public health and bachelor's of social work, he's gotten to speak and write about a diversity of topics like rejection, creativity, substance use, and mental health. His first book will be finished this year. Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow, that's a lot. Very, very impressive.
Right. So with that introduction, let's get started. Tell us, David, about that journey that Donny just read. But tell us about your spiritual journey. Tell us about your awakenings, and especially give us some juicy stories of how that unfolded for you that brings you to this point now.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that introduction. As you're reading it, I realized I wrote this at the beginning of the year, so it made me feel like I had more time to finish the book. So as we're nearing the last part of it, I realize I need to edit that. But thank you so much, everyone, for having me. So my journey in spirituality, I think, in thinking about how to answer this, I think it's best for right now for me to think of my story in two columns. The first column is my spiritual journey, but then also my gay journey. And because for the first parts of my life, those two were separated.
They were separated.
Yeah. As a bit of a spoiler alert, now they're integrated. So they're the one that's but yes, so my spiritual journey, I wasn't really raised in a religious home, but I was raised in kind of a pseudo-Mexican Hispanic kind of background. I think my family's been here generationally for many years. And so it's hard for me to kind of even subscribe to a particular culture or religion. But I found very early on that I was just drawn to the things of God. I would ask my parents to take me to church, or I had an uncle who was very religious, and I would look forward to going to his house to study the Bible, and then also play with my girl cousins' Barbies. Those are the two things. But And so I was interested in that. And, my parents went through a little religious phase, so they had a Bible laying around. And one day, I was about 12 years old, I literally started opening the Bible and read Genesis 1. And as I did that, I noticed answers to my questions. I wasn't sure what to, I'd remember stories about Moses or hearing about palm fronds, and so I just had so many questions, and so I found those in the Bible. And it was such a beautiful thing to have those questions answered. And being kind of a very intellectual, curious child, I loved studying and reading, and so I dove headfirst into that. Um, my family is culturally or heritage-wise Catholic, and so as I was kind of going through this religious conversion experience as an adolescent, I guess the natural inclination was for me to ask my father to take me to the Catholic Church. And so he enrolled me in a catechism classes to get, and it was a year-long process. And so I think I had a 3-in-1 kind of experience in that I went through this course, and so I was able to get confirmed, baptized, and communion all in one go. And during this whole process, I still had so many questions, and so I'd go to these classes every Wednesday and ask questions that weren't really getting answered. Um, so concurrently, also going I was also I was in high school at this time. I was a freshman in high school, and there was a girl that I liked who introduced me to Southern Baptist, the ways of Southern Baptist, and so I got, of course, saved. And I prayed the sinner's prayer, which, for those of you who are unfamiliar with that, means that I admitted that I was a sinner, that I could not save myself, and I accepted Jesus into my heart. And so these two experiences, me being in Catholicism, enrolled in Catholic, catechism and such, and also being very, um, uh, conservative Southern Christian, there was a bit of at odds with the two, but I still kind of held on to that and still believed. I still prayed the rosary, which was a Catholic tradition, while still, reading the Bible only, which was kind of that Baptist experience. And after I finished my catechism, my Catholic training, my parents didn't really want to take me to church, so I stayed home and started reading again as I did my own experience. And so I would spend my weekends reading online different religious biblical resources and studying, and really started to adapt more to make my faith my own. It wasn't anybody else's faith. And so in many ways, it was a blessing because I was able to kind of pick and choose and believe how I wanted to, or how I felt I was being led. And one summer I came back and visited my uncle, who was a part of a Pentecostal church. And I saw the power of people experiencing the divine. And so people were speaking in tongues, they were falling over, they were running down the aisles, and I wanted that. That seemed so fun because I was so curious about experiencing the divine.
Mhm.
And so given the where I was at in my life as a teenager, I dove into that. I got the prayers. I got baptized in the Holy Spirit, which in Pentecostal language means that you received the special anointing, the special touch from the Holy Spirit. And so I started speaking in tongues. I started falling down when the ministers would lay their hands on me, and it was a very profound experience and feeling that
Mhm.
peace. Kirk, when you and I met, you spoke of the whoosh of the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
and I felt that, and so I I kind of felt like I had the call to ministry as a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, dove head into, again, continued to read, the Bible. And by the time I was a junior in high school, I was able to start driving. And so I drove myself to the local Pentecostal church and got heavily involved there. I got heavily involved in the youth group and got to do some speaking. Within the youth group, there was the opportunity for um, uh, purity pledges. And so this was the early 2000s in Orange Park, Florida, which is about 30 minutes outside of Jacksonville. And it was what you would expect from a Pentecostal church. And so all of the politics and all the funness that is associated with that. And so when it was presented to me that I shouldn't have sex until marriage, I thought that made perfect sense. I was fully committed to God. I was on fire for God. I was a Jesus freak. I wore multiple WWJD bracelets, and I thought it was wonderful. And
Mm.
all of this time, I haven't gotten into my sexuality portion of my story yet. This whole time, I felt, okay, well, sex is wrong, sex is bad. And so it's only good in the context of marriage. And so when I marry a woman, it's going to be good. And God will reward me for all of my waiting. So put a pin in that thought, okay? Because we're going to return to it. And so I graduate high school and get accepted to a couple of Christian universities. And so I decide to go to a Pentecostal university in the Tampa area. And so I was going to be a pastor. And so I went all in. I was so excited. And I was raised as an only child. And so living with people, my first week was very different than what I was used to. I wasn't used to sharing things and living
Mm.
spaces and all of that. So it was very challenging. But what was even more challenging was that I was living with a bunch of guys who were half naked half the time as they were walking to the showers. And I was, um, you know, during this time, kind of obviously I would see guys that I thought were attractive, and I just kind of thought, well, I don't feed that side of me, right? Like I want to see these hot guys, but I'm not going to think about it. So I would see them and I would feel things for it, but then I would just ignore it. And so within the first couple of weeks of Christian college, I found a girlfriend. Because I didn't have to have sex. I didn't have to do anything physical. I just chose a girl that I thought was that I felt like and I would agree with, that she was pretty and we had things in common. And so started dating. And it turned out she liked me. And after a couple of weeks, I felt um, like she was someone that God had sent in my life. Because remind you, I was a virgin and I had never seriously dated anybody before. So I felt like the first girl that I would have met in Christian college, in the
Mm.
culture that I was in, that said that
Mm.
Christians got married in
Mm.
college and all
Mm.
that stuff. So I thought,
Mm.
I'm going to marry this girl. And so I told her one
Mm.
night, I will never forget this. I was walking around, we were walking around the promenade in the college, and there was a big Jesus fountain that had just been built. And it's the picture, it's a fountain of Jesus washing his disciples' feet. And so we sat down next to the Jesus fountain, and I said, yeah, I'm really struggling. And she's like, what? What's going on? I said, well, Satan is tempting me with thoughts of homosexuality. And she looked at me very understandingly, and she said, well, let's take a break for a weekend. And over the course of the weekend, she proceeded to tell her dorm that I was gay,
Oh
and
my.
um, and and then ultimately, of course, finally told me that she broke up with me. And so, needless to say, I went into a very deep depression because here I was. I went to college. I kind of thought when I got to Christian college, it was going to be, I literally thought this, that it was going to be like Harry Potter going to Hogwarts. And that is to say, I was going to be some big spiritual giant, and I would lay my hands out and people would get healed and fall over, and it was going to be amazing. And then God was going to provide this beautiful wife for me, and I was going to live happily ever after in the name of Jesus. And here I am a month into school and
Mm. Mm.
being outed for by someone that I thought that I loved or thought it was moving towards love. And I'm kind of getting the timing wrong because it's been a very long time since then.
Yeah.
But and so very, very deep depression. And so I ultimately decide not to pursue a background in ministry for a church or for my college experience. So I ended up getting a degree in social work, which was fine for what it was. fast forward many years, and so I finished college and get my graduate degree, and um, still in my 20s had so much anxiety and depression. And one day I go out and I'm really trying to just be a bro, right? Like I finally move out of my parents' home and move in with a very straight guy. And so we go out to a bar and they're playing Madonna in the background. It was Vogue, and I'm kind of like, like I secretly love this song, right? I know all the words to it, um, and so we meet up with my roommate's friends, and there's a guy there, a bro. I would say he had a backwards hat, he had big cargo shorts, and he looks over and says, "Yeah, you gays love Madonna, don't you?" And my heart dropped. Because mind you, here I am, I'm wearing some kind of sports t-shirt and like trying to say man at the end of every sentence and that sort of thing. And this stranger could tell my deepest, darkest secret.
Mm-hmm.
And so I say, "Oh, yeah, those gays too. Yeah, they definitely they definitely like Madonna too. I'm not gay, so I wouldn't know." Like, so I say something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The next day, I go home and in the darkest depression that I ever had experienced. And in hindsight now, it's like, yeah, that guy was probably probably like either an ally or maybe he was gay himself. Like he didn't say it maliciously. He just kind of just said, came in like Madonna, which is true, right? Um, but for me at that time, being very closeted, being very Christian, being very virginal, still a virgin, I was probably like 25 or so. And it was a huge blow to my identity. And so I spiraled into a very deep, dark depression. And ultimately, that experience led me to be on a very good mixture of antidepressants and anti-anxiety, and to which I'm still grateful to be on today. And so I only tell that part of the story because that one story, that incident that was very difficult for me, the guy calling me out as gay, actually ultimately led to me being on the right kind of treatment of medications for my mental health. So I was incredibly grateful for that. But to bring that story back to my faith journey, I dove into what I would consider conversion therapy light literature. So I would read Christian books that were written by ex-gay ex-gay men, and kind of the prescription that these books would say would be just put yourself into more masculine situations and you will discover your masculinity and you will meet a woman and you'll eventually learn how to um, love and be attracted to a woman. So I did that. And fast forward a couple more years, I get married. I find a woman and it makes sense. This person was, we were compatible enough and they shared the same faith beliefs. And so that meant that we didn't have sex until our wedding night. And to say the wedding night was a disappointment would be a huge understatement.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it was. It was because all of these expectations were placed that I held on myself, were that this is going to be an amazing night. And I'd never been with a woman before, so I kind of just figured all those thoughts that I had about guys would go away when I finally got to see how great it was to be with them. And it didn't. It got worse. And so fast forward a year and a half later, the marriage ends because my ex-wife didn't feel that I loved her. And I was completely, taken aback by it because I would have said I did love her and was committed and tried to make the marriage work, and it didn't. And so at that moment when the marriage ended, when she left me, I had to find a place to live. I was in we had moved to a different state, far from all of the friends and family that I knew, and then far from my, like family, and I was in a new kind of job situation. And so I was left all alone. And never had I felt more abandoned by God.
Mm, mm,
And so, um, a couple months later, I was alone by myself, and the job that I had been working in um, put me on a performance plan because I was working in sales at the time and I wasn't meeting my numbers. I was in a new territory, blah, 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 blah. And I had just gotten rejected from a doctoral program that I didn't get into. And so I just felt like my father had died like 2 years earlier. And so it was a
mm.
whole bunch of setback and rejection and grief that I didn't face. So I was at rock bottom.
Yeah.
And I said, fuck you, God.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a
Mm-hmm.
bit of a trigger warning. A little bit of self-harm, and I'm sorry that I didn't mention this at the beginning of my story. But I was in the Target parking lot, and I went in, bought some sleeping pills, and I didn't
Mm,
necessarily want to die. I wasn't trying to
mm,
kill myself,
mm.
but I wanted to just not feel. So
Yeah.
I bought the sleeping pills. I don't even know how many I took. It wasn't very much, but I took some, drove home as fast as I could, ran up the stairs, took the Bible that I had, a leather bound, New Living Translation, Life Application Bible was what it was called.
Mm,
I
mm,
took it and I ripped the shit out of that book
mm, mm,
because I followed everything that I thought it was,
mm.
and it still failed me. My job wasn't
Yeah.
successful. My father was dead. My life, and so all of those things. And I'm saying that because that's descriptive of the story, not to be woe is me. And so I threw those in the dumpster and never looked back.
Mm, mm.
And guess what? Lightning did not strike me when I tore up the pages in the Bible. So, and I'm still here today, so that's been a while. So, but kind of at this point, that was kind of the the rock bottom of my story. And so I tried to give up religion. I tried to give up God. And I said fuck you to God, but yet I was still drawn to the spiritual because just a couple of weeks later, I went into Barnes and Noble and had a couple of years earlier, I had come across the teachings of Louise Hay and religious
Mm,
science and
mm,
kind of
mm.
that new thought vein that I mentioned in my bio. And new thought, for those of you who don't know, is essentially a positive spirituality that really talks about the power of the mind. Um, and some feedback, I think somebody mute them. Um, and and so I tried to quit God, but God didn't quit me because I found myself coming into these teachings that were more empowering than what traditional Christianity had taught me. Traditional Christianity taught me that God was out there, that I was bad and I needed saving. And then as I came across new thought teachings, I realized that I was good and that I had power in my words and my thoughts and all of these things. And so
Mhm.
slowly but surely, I started um, climbing out of the mire that my life had been. And fast forward a number of a long while, and I end up coming across Unity San Francisco, which is a church that's here in San Francisco, um, and uh, and then I joined staff, and now I'm on track to become a licensed Unity teacher. And when I joined staff, the minister asked me to start a gay men's spirituality group. And
Mm,
all of a sudden, I go from wanting no one to know my deepest, darkest secret that I was gay, to all of a sudden having pictures of myself advertising for not just a gay group, but a gay spirituality group, which is not exclusively Christian. So here I am all over San Francisco and not knowing now the digital reach of it. All over the world, people can see me as not just gay, but also not just Christian. And so it's a beautiful kind of juxtaposition from going from shame to celebration. So all of that was my faith journey. And now to go back to my gay journey, which is a little less brief, but I think it's important because in my work now, it's very important to celebrate both the gayness. Um, Growing up, I was drawn towards the feminine things. One of my earliest memories was me putting a pillowcase over my legs to be a mermaid. Little Mermaid has been released. And it's actually quite serendipitous that The Little Mermaid is making a resurgence this year, as I'm stepping more into my gayness. But um, the message that I got from my family was don't be different. Don't be maricon, which is like a kind of like a gay slander in Spanish. And don't be like that. And so I internalized that. And my dad would would spank me, get me in trouble for me crying, and said, I remember, these traumatic, like just these memories, saying, I cry, and he'd say, what do you want me to dress you up like a girl in a dress? And I remember thinking to myself as I'm getting, beaten, like, oh, that actually doesn't sound so bad to be wearing, and so so I hid that part of me. And so diving into Christianity, I do remember when I was studying Christianity as a 12-year-old thinking, oh, if I became a Christian, that meant that I didn't have to be gay. And I somehow internalized that message from somewhere. And so that's, I think, subconsciously why I dove so hard into it. Now, of course, knowing what I know a number of so many Christians who are both Christian and gay. But at the time, I didn't realize that, that I thought they were exclusive. Um, and so, also for me, so I mentioned that rock bottom moment when the marriage ended. And I didn't, I actually thought that, so when the marriage ended, I said, fuck you to God, because God had said, fuck you to me. And so I said, I'm going to do what I've always wanted to do, and that is have sex with a man. And so I had found myself, I was visiting my family in San Francisco. I was living in Texas at the time, but I was visiting my family in the Bay Area, and my flight had gotten stranded. And this was like a couple of months after the marriage ended. And I'm like, fuck, I can't even get back home. Like nothing in the universe is like wanting me to like go right. And so I said, I'm gonna go. I'm in the gay capital of the world. I'm gonna go and experience this. So I called myself an Uber from the airport, and I looked up on my phone. I didn't know anything about the Castro other than I knew that that's where the gays went, and I looked for a gay bar to go to. And this was a Sunday evening at like 9 p.m. And I looked for a gay bar, and I found a bar called The Edge, and I decided to go to it because it reminded me of a Lady Gaga song. She has a song called Edge of Glory, and that was one of my favorite Lady Gaga songs. So I was like, I'm gonna be gay, might as well as be gay all the way in, right? And so the Uber takes me to The Edge, and mind you, I'm carrying my wheelie luggage, so scared because I had been taught my entire life that gay men were predators and that I was, I like that's just the negative messages that I got. And I was so scared, but I was so thrilled. And so I walk into the bar, and as it turns out, when you go to a gay bar and you say that your wife just left you and you're questioning your sexuality, turns out you make a lot of friends at the gay bar. And you get free drinks. So I got a lot of free drinks that night. And I end up going home with a guy. And what happens when you have a lot to drink? and you try to have sexual experiences. Doesn't work as planned. So here I am at some stranger's house. He was incredibly kind, incredibly nice, and I couldn't get hard. My first first gay experience.
Mm-hmm.
I left that experience incredibly confused. And so for a while, I thought to myself, well, maybe I was able to be a virgin for so long because I didn't have any sexual attractions to people because I didn't really watch porn. I hadn't experimented with guys growing up, and I apparently, sex with women didn't do anything for me. So I was very, very confused. So about a year goes by, and I end up trying to have sex with a man again, and it works, but it doesn't it's not like all that great. And so my gay journey over time kind of grew, and so I grew into my gayness. I was definitely gay all along, but it wasn't easy for me to embrace that until I fully accepted myself. And so um, I have a partner, and one of the first times that we got together, I realized after I told him I'm really gay. So it was kind of like a confirmation that yeah, I was gay all along. So that was a beautiful kind of experience to see all of that. And so this whole time, my whole life had been kind of disjointed. So I had, the spiritual side, then I had the closeted side, and then after a couple of years, after being at rock bottom, essentially, I had the gay side. And as I came out more, the gay side started growing, and I started seeing that the gay part of me can be spiritual. The gay part of me can make myself be known, and I started feeling good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my whole life I'd kind of felt like I wasn't creative. One of the affirmations, one of the things I used to tell myself was, "Oh, I'm not really intuitive. I'm not really that, I can't tell people's motives. I'm not an ideas person."
Mm-hmm.
And then when I came out to myself and came out to the world, it's like I suddenly began to experience a flood of creativity, and my intuition
Mm-hmm.
started going off all the time. And I am incredibly intuitive. And how I kind of explain it now in hindsight and in my writing is that I see that when I was closeted, I was dead to my truest parts of myself. I was dead to my subconscious.
Yeah.
The subconscious is always speaking to us when we deny the very essence of who we are, that is to say, our sexuality, we're dead to getting insights from that.
Yeah.
Uh, and so when I accepted myself, I started getting insights and started becoming more creative and embraced that and started taking voice lessons again as I, embraced my that part of me that I'd always hidden. I used to sing in high school and I was ashamed of it. I knew it made me feel good to sing, but it also made me feel bad because guys shouldn't sing. Guys shouldn't know the words to all the, musicals and all this stuff. So that was just one of the many ways that I reclaimed that.
Mm-hmm.
So as you're seeing me now, you're seeing a very integrated person. And as I continue to meditate and stay engaged with my spirituality and working on my writing, um, ideas come so quickly to me because I'm so open to it. I'm so open to the divine that's all around us. And so it's very beautiful to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so to answer the question that I know you're probably going to ask next is how do I
Yes.
see the gay tribe, the gay world?
Yes.
Before I stop, is there any questions or any reactions, Kirk, or should I wait till the end?
Yeah, let's wait till the
Okay.
end. I
Okay.
think we probably stirred up a lot of good stuff, though.
So how I see the gay tribe, I've heard it said that we mainstream always calls us the gay queer community, but that's kind of a small kind of subset. If you think of a subset of a population of a city, a community is like a neighborhood, right? I see the queer tribe as a population because we are all over the world. We are in different places physically and geographically. We different, queer folks have so many talents and so many strengths. And so I prefer not to call it a community. I prefer to call it a population. And I love the concept of tribe, though, too, because tribe um, uh, intimates that there is a cultural identity. Harry Hay really, I fell in love with his writings earlier this year, and he talks about part of what he did with the Mattachine Society in the 50s was that he kind of wrote like a manifesto about how the gay population culture has its own, it should be considered a minority because it has its own culture, it has its own mores, it has in some extent its own language. And so having that ability to be a minority, a people group is so empowering, and it gives a sense of identity. Being gay is not something that I do because I have a choice. I do it because it's who I am. That's what I chose to be when I incarnated into this earthly body. It's how the divine has made me and created me. And
I still
so,
have time here. I'm just gonna move my car.
and so it's so powerful. And so I see the queer tribe as being so vast and so wonderful. And I'm inspired by the works of Toby Johnson and Christian de la Huerta and Harry Hay, who writes so much about um, queer identity and the gay archetypes. Because I came across these writings. And again, I just want to recognize Toby, who's on the call, because his book was one of the very first books I read on spirituality, and this was all that was new to me until I read your book, Toby. And so I had that sense of identity, and I was in a space in my life where I was questioning like who I was. And so and I was gay and I was, working in the church stuff, but I meant like, what was my impact on the world? And it wasn't until I started diving deeper into queer spirituality that I realized that the queer tribe has a set of specific strengths. And it's only when we as queer folks embody those strengths that we're able to change the world. And so my vision for the queer tribe is that everyone learns what makes them come alive. And so when we learn what makes us come alive, whether it means that we are in a traditionally stereotypical gay occupation, like being a hairdresser or a florist, we can be purveyors of beauty. Or if we are gay nurses, we're caretakers. Or if the archetype that I identify most with, and I would imagine many of the people on the call would identify with if they're a part of a group such as this, would be the magician, shaman, priest kind of gay archetype, which exists to help connect the rest of the world to the divine. And in sharing my story, I see that archetype playing out in all phases of my life, no matter what my religious inclination was at the time, whether I was a little Catholic boy or I was a Pentecostal religious Jesus freak, or whether I am now a very spiritual, trans-denominational, trans-religious believer, interfaith believer. All of that is still within me. It just takes different flavors. So my hope for the gay tribe is that we discover that for ourselves individually.
Great. So aliveness is your vision for us to find our aliveness.
I love it. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful words. Great. Well, you've kind of wandered through all of the questions in your story. I'm sure just probably surfaced a lot of things for the folks on the call, and especially even people who will be watching it later when it's on recording. But let's open up the lines to anyone who's among us and hear any comments, any questions that you have of David from what he shared.
Yes, we may not see your hand, so just go ahead and unmute yourself and shout out.
Hi there. This is Noel.
Great, Noah.
Nice to see you. Thank you very much for this community and just for bringing up, all the wonderful ideas and just the gifts that you guys have for our community. And thank you, David, for sharing your truth.
Yay.
And just I wanted to be here to support you and also for the tribe to flourish and grow. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you for your support and for your story. It really meant a lot to me to hear your story. And being a part of both community or both groups, it's just a delight to hear you grow, to hear you flourish, and to see you for who you are. So thank you so much. And thank you, Kirk and Don, for allowing this venue.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel. Your support and your spirit just transcends just so much love and joy.
Yes. Others, questions, comments for David before we conclude?
Andrew, are you raising your hands?
Yes.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Yes. My question is, I feel part of a queer tribe. I prefer the word queer now instead of gay, even though I read all the books that and the others that you mentioned, David, as in Grace de la Fuerza and, of course, Toby Johnson, 2 books of which are on a shelf somewhere behind it. One is still in a box when I moved. That's the one, Toby, that you wrote and autographed. You didn't write it for me, but you autographed it for me. And it's the one about the aliens in San Francisco. I so loved it. But David, I feel part of a queer tribe, but it seems that for me, that queer tribe is somehow somewhere in the ether. It doesn't really exist where I am. And I just don't understand. So I don't know if you have a reaction to that. And I don't know how to connect. I mean, I used to subscribe when that magazine was around to White Crane, but that's a long time ago. There is still, of course, that other magazine that I no longer subscribe to, the one of the radical fairies put out. So what is there for me? Maybe that's one thing I could do this evening, is to subscribe to that other magazine. But what do I do? I'm alone. And I don't want to go to a club, to a dancing hall and dance the way I did just because I'm supposed to, because that's the only thing I can do.
Where are you?
I'm in Montreal, Canada, my dear Toby. It's one of the gay meccas, but it doesn't do anything for me. They had for some reason Montreal has Gay Pride in August. It was celebrated over a week ago, I think. They had big things. They had somewhere in the East End, but it's not really what I'm looking for at all. I'm not a dancing queen at my age.
You know, so you're not terribly far from Easton Mountain in Albany, New York. Do you know Easton Mountain?
I've heard of it, yes.
That's a gay men's retreat center. There are various kinds of workshops. Many of them are spirituality, some are sexuality. Have you done the Body Electric?
I've heard of it, but yeah.
But do it.
Yeah, great. And David, a response from you?
Yes, and I hear that so deeply, Andrew, and I'm so sorry to hear that you don't feel a part of that community of the or the you know the queer tribe. You don't feel that way. I would just love to affirm that the two biggest things about being gay or queer is that you have a same-sex attraction, but then also living authentically. Like that's the bigger thing. And so there's no real prerequisite other than really kind of those two things, but really more so living authentically. And so what that means in the context of your life is that I meet a number of folks in the gay men's group who don't feel like there's like they fit in the gay realm, but there's just so much to be said about living your own truth. And so, there are a number of resources that are on the call, and I think you being a part of this call is just so empowering for yourself and acknowledging that. And so if you may not find, queer community in your physical geographic space, at least you're finding it in the digital virtual space as well.
Yes.
So I know that's not really an answer per se, but it is something that I hope that you can take encouragement from.
Yeah. And I would just add, thank you for sharing that and longing for that connection. And if nothing else, know that you're always welcome here. So virtually, these calls happen, about once a month. So feel free to keep joining us and kind of getting different flavors. But more than that, just letting us see you while you see us. Because for me, I think much of our disenfranchisement, even in David, in your story, what I heard was you had to deny yourself. So there were so many times and ways in which you didn't feel like you fit into what was going on. So know you're welcome here, and if there are ways that we can plug you into, like Toby was saying, other resources and so forth that might be available to you. But at least digitally, you do have a family here. So great. Any last comments? I know we're kind of running over time, but
Hi,
closing.
I'm Stephen from Tacoma, Washington, and I wanted to thank David for articulating your story so beautifully and clearly. It really it was very moving to me, and many parts of it were totally resonant with my own story. But I'm curious about what is it like for you today when you feel disconnected from spirit, or do you always feel connected?
What is it? So the short answer, no, I don't always feel connected to spirit. But I think that that's an opportunity for me to be reminded that I actually am always connected to spirit.
Yeah.
Even when I don't feel like that. That's part of the experience of getting to be incarnated in this physical body. So again, that's also kind of a not answer, but it's an answer, right? Like, so I think that's the challenge of being a human. But then, just very practically though, I think that we always have a sense of, we have the choice to stay engaged with our spirituality. And so when I'm not feeling engaged with my spirituality, I know that that's a sign that I need to. And so I engage in things that I call spiritual hobbies rather than spiritual disciplines. And so I love to go and journal, and I get my inspiration from doing my morning pages where I let go of any kind of critic that I may have and just write and engage in meditation and sound meditation and all of those sorts of things. So that's just kind of a way that I get reminded of my spirituality.
Excellent. Thank you.
That's helpful. My next question is, do you feel like the queer community has a responsibility at the moment in our culture to do anything to heal some of the divisions?
Yes, so absolutely. I affirm that when each queer person lives into their truest identity and their truest gifts, that has ripples across the world. And just from a very quantum level, when I am, let's say I can only speak from my experience, when I am living my truest self, that is to say, speaking in a group like this, where I'm talking about gayness and spirituality, hopefully I'm impacting each and every one of you to at least feel better in some way. And so when you feel better, you're going to treat other people better, and they're going to treat other people better. And so before long, it's a cosmic quantum change, domino effect of joy. And so at Unity San Francisco, we have an affirmation that we say, I lovingly commit to creating a world of safety, equity, and equality. And so part of that is that we make the world better in just some way. So I may not be on the front picket lines, but I certainly can treat my partner better in life, and my parents and all of that stuff, so it's just kind of that ripple effect.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to.
Yeah, okay, David, thank you. Thank you for being the next generation doing this work.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I love the fact that this, even this call is kind of multi-generational, and I know that's part of your heart's path that you shared with me as well, David. So thank you for bridging some of the multi-generational gaps, as well as all of the umbrella that we all call the queer tribe. So we are going to have to close. Anything that you want to plug for folks?
Yeah.
You're writing a book.
I'm writing my book, and so I do not have a publisher or anything. I don't know what's gonna happen with the book when I'm finished with it, but I am. I put my website in the chat, and so when it is ready, I would love for folks to sign up for. I have a free chapter on my website, and so that will kind of get you onto my mailing list. And I actually don't ever send anything through it, so I just want to build up my mailing list so that when my book is ready, I can share the news. And then I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. So I would just love to stay connected, and I'm so grateful for this space and for everything that everyone is just showing up here, is helping the world become a better place.
Yeah. Plus, you have don't you have besides your Unity Gay Men's group,
Yes.
but you also have an online group?
I do, yes. So if anybody here, so I run the Gay Men's Spirituality out of Unity San Francisco. And so I have an in-person group that meets once a month. And then I also have an online group that meets once a month out of that as well. It's the same group, just different formats. So Andrew, if you were curious, or you were able to go, it is a virtual format as well. And that's monthly. It's an hour. So it's another resource.
Excellent. Well, thank you, David, so much for your life, for integrating all those parts. The quote that just kind of resonated throughout the whole call for me is, I'm a big Rumi guy. So Rumi kind of guides my life spiritually. But Rumi's quote about, through the wound comes the blessing, through the wound comes the light. And so you have become much more a manifest light than you ever were when there were just parts of you. The whole of you is just shining, and I'm feeling it. I'm getting chills over it. So blessings on your ministry, blessings to all of you, beloved brothers, or if there are other genders and orientations online as well. Our next call, most likely we're doing a lot of networking around the world right now with folks. So as we have a number of juicy folks that we may want to bring on. I know one of them will be our Damien Rowe, who is kind of leading up a world pagan indigenous culture spirituality group for queer men. And I'm looking forward. I know he said yes. I just don't know when we'll have him on. So
he's based in Auckland, New Zealand.
Yeah. So stay tuned for a lot more Queer Tribe calls, and thank you all for participating participating and being the lights that you are to
Yes.
the world.
Blessings
Thank
to
you.
all.
All right. Namaste.
So much love and gratitude for
Very
you all.
much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. All right. Closing the recording.